This week saw the release of Ant-Man, Marvel's official finale to what they're calling Phase 2. Even before the movie was completed, it was making headlines. I'm of course referring to the exit of beloved British director Edgar Wright over creative differences, forever leaving fans to ask what could have been with him at the helm. It's really for this and maybe a few other reasons that plenty of film pundits have already been predicting that this movie will finally be the one that breaks Marvel's winning streak, almost as if they had a bunch of half-written think pieces about the movie all ready to go should it fail. In the end, Ant-Man was finally brought to us by Peyton Reed and Anchorman writer Adam McKay. The story as it is finds Hank Pym, the original comic Ant-Man, played by Michael Douglas, attempting to hide his secret Pym particle formula from his former protege Darren Cross, who hopes to weaponize these shrinking abilities and sell it off to some very evil and very familiar people. When his Ant-Man suit is stolen by Paul Rudd's ex-con burglar Scott Lang, the two will need to join forces to save the day. Now, I've always liked Rudd as an actor. He has movie star good looks and great comedic sensibility. In a way, he's the perfect choice for a Marvel movie. They're joined by Hank's daughter, Hope Van Dyne, played by Lost Evangeline Lilly, and you know what, it's hard to believe in 2015, that's still the only place people seem to know her from. The big joke with her is just how much more suited to being a superhero she is than Scott, and her strained relationship with her father and the loss of her mother, fan favorite and the original Wasp, Janet, make up a big chunk of the movie. Also, despite what other critics might tell you, Hope is indeed a character from the comics, just, from an alternate reality in the comics, where she had her dad's last name and she was a villain, and comics never change. In fact, while Ant-Man is at heart a comedy heist film with perhaps more in common with Jackass than Ocean's 11, the major theme is one of fathers and their daughters, not just Hank and Hope, but Scott and his daughter Cassie, who he is desperately trying to reconnect with and prove that he is every bit the good man that she seems to think he is. As Hank himself so wonderfully lampshades in the movie, this isn't about saving the world, this is about saving their world. In many ways, Ant-Man shares a ton of DNA with its older brother Iron Man 1, mainly, and pardon the pun on this one, I feel absolutely terrible, it has a much smaller scale. It's a story about a man trying to find redemption through superheroics, and after the enjoyable but admittedly kind of bloated in parts Age of Ultron, it serves as a nice change of pace to end Phase 2 by going back to basics just a little bit. The movie also changes up Scott Lang in some pretty interesting ways. This time around, instead of being just a regular cat burglar, he's a whistleblower who went to jail for ripping off his own corrupt company after getting canned. Easily the movie's greatest secret weapon is Michael Pena, who plays Scott's old cellmate turned best friend. This guy absolutely steals the show for every minute he's on screen, and he will no doubt be one of the most quoted characters of this summer movie season. He's so good they could put him in the comics tomorrow and I don't think anyone would complain. So if you're new or somehow couldn't put it together, Ant-Man's power is he can shrink, and those scenes are very creatively put together. I don't know what things would look like or sound like at ant size, but I'm pretty sure the movie does a really nice job painting that picture for us. We also get some very well realized training montages that not only teach us about Ant-Man's abilities, but also build characters out of the ants themselves, which do indeed pay off in the end. Perhaps the biggest flaw of Ant-Man and why I feel some people are going to get turned off from the film is just how much of a slow burn it really is. It's kind of like Avengers 1 all over again, where they need to set up the chessboard first so they can blow it up again in the third act. And by Thanos, what a third act this movie has. They get super creative by letting the full-on destruction that usually comes part and parcel with superhero movies take place in a very small space, which ends up being equal parts exciting and hilarious. And you know what, stop me if you've heard this one before, and honestly, I'm really beginning to feel like a broken record. I felt the villain was lacking in depth. Yeah, I think this many movies in, we can all just safely assume that if your name's not Loki or Kingpin, you ain't getting developed all that much. Of course, Darren Cross ain't exactly a gem either. I mean, he was always a bland dime-a-dozen evil businessman. In fact, when he died in the first story he appeared in, he actually stayed dead. That's how uninteresting he was. And I mean, in the movie, he wasn't even a pink giant or anything. If anything, by making him a former student of Pym turned bad guy by his neglect, they actually did him a ton of favors. And because in the movies, Pym didn't build Ultron, it's kind of nice to see Yellow Jacket as the monster Pym ended up creating anyway. In fact, there's a moment near the end of the film where they imply that Cross's villainy was actually brought on by too much shrinking that warped his brain, an idea that I would have liked to have seen play out a bit more. And while I don't want to spoil it, Ant-Man has at least two positively killer Avengers connections actually in the movie, as well as two absolutely awesome post-credit scenes. And more than that, it probably has the best reason that any movie has come up with to date why Scott and Hank just don't go running to the Avengers Avengers for help. By far though, my favorite thing about this movie is that finally, we have a summer superhero movie where the final battle doesn't involve needing to stop a big evil machine from doing big evil things. And for that reason alone, Ant-Man should be getting everyone's seal of approval, not just mine. In summation, if you want to laugh, have yourself a good time, and maybe learn a thing or two about a more obscure superhero, as well as gather very essential pieces for the next big Marvel crossover, then you should totally see Ant-Man. It's not my new favorite, nor do I think it's as big a triumph as Guardians of the Galaxy was, but it stands on its own 2 feet and might very well be Marvel's most accessible movie to date. And even if it doesn't clean up at the box office, admittedly it's still really early as I record this, opening night in fact, the fact that this movie made me care about the fate of ants is proof positive that Marvel, well, they can pretty much do anything, can't they?